Hello and welcome to this interactive webinar, 3 Keys to Making Working at Home a Positive and Productive Experience, otherwise known as Working Virtually. The session this afternoon is here to give you some practical tips to help you keep you positive in the face as you transition to remote working, which can be a major change to anyone's working environment. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Roberto Dal Corso. I'm just curious. If you call up your participant guide, you should be able to see a yes or even a raise your hand. And I'm just curious, if you've heard me speak before, just hit a yes or raise your hand if you've attended one of my trainings. While you do that, I'll just mention quickly something about me, because I know you haven't come here today to hear me speak, but yeah, my name is Roberto Dal Corso. I've been working at home for a little bit over 3 years permanently, purely because I set up my own business working from home 3 years. Prior to that, I came out of a corporate environment, leading teams in US, Europe, Africa. So literally led teams on 3 continents at the same time. And that's about all I really want to share about myself. So, I transitioned about 3 years ago from full-time office to working remotely, and I overcame some of the challenges. So I really want to share those with you this afternoon. So by the time you leave the webinar, you'll know what you need to start building good habits for working remotely, so you can just be as productive, if not more productive, than in the office. And if you are already a remote working pro, then maybe this session can help you to help your colleagues make that transition. But either way, I think we're going to have some fun today, and it's going to be good. So, again, welcome to everyone. Just quickly, some of the tools that I've already mentioned that we're going to be using today. We're going to use the chat box. So I see most people have already found the chat box. Excellent. If you've just joined and you don't know where the chat box is, hover down towards the bottom of the screen. You should see your chat box. You click on that, and you can type into it. Something else we're going to be using today, I'm going to be asking several different questions, and I'm just going to ask you to pick some answers and tick them off. And then, of course, if you have any questions, by all means, type them into the chat box or raise your hand, and we'll unmute you, and we can get to those as quickly as we can. But yes, we will be leveraging all of our virtual tools so that you can engage with me. And the reason I ask you to engage with me is that so that we can learn something together and, maybe have some fun while we do it, because I do enjoy having fun. So this is an opportunity to connect, an opportunity to share, as well as walk away with some practical tips. So, this hour is not going to be a session on, how do we wash hands, social distancing. It's really about creating some good habits that you can count on to be engaged with your work, with your team, with your manager. While everything we share today is really common sense, it may surprise you it's not common practice. And let's face it, literally, let's face it. It's not natural or intuitive, to be on camera for long periods of time, over-communicate to the smallest, of tasks, and have to worry that your digital brand is going to impact your trustworthiness in the workplace. So it isn't most natural, it isn't the most common. But moving forward, we probably sit here today because most organizations, most governments, most people, our pure desire to contain the spread and the impact of the COVID-19 virus has led, most organizations around the world and are requiring its employees to work from home. And often organizations, when they are out creating work from home policies, it's not an urgent matter. But somehow here we are, it's now urgent, and who knows, it might even become the new norm for many of us. For some of us, working from home isn't really a big change. Like I said, for myself, it's estimated that in Europe, probably 43% of Europeans and Americans already work from home occasionally, and 5.2% work at home full-time. I'm one of the 5.2%. However, there's a big difference between working from home occasionally from your kitchen table 1 or 2 days a week, or sitting setting up a shop like you can see in the background. I've got my own office permanently dedicated to working from home. So, I just want to quickly check on a few things. And as I said, we're going to do a couple of things. This is very interactive. So I'm just going to quickly launch a poll, and I'd like you to have a look at the two questions and, check the one that you feel is the one that resounds to you the most. So, the first question is, how often did you work at home last year? And I'd like you to, go ahead, select one of the answers and hit submit. And the question below that one is, how often do you work from home now? And I'm just going to give that a couple of seconds while I see everyone is going ahead and finding the polls, because, it's, as we said, it's not natural to be doing that. So let's see, we've got, okay, looking good. How often did you work from home? Every day. Okay, we've got a nice spread of answers. Just going to give it a couple of more seconds just for the last people to get their last one in. And I see pretty much everyone has done perfect. Now I can only say thank you. Let me quickly end that poll, and I'm just going to quickly share the results with you. So immediately you can see that, how often did people work from home last year? The majority out of that is rarely, but we can see that it's pretty much on the low side. How often do you work from home now? Well, it certainly has grown. So I think, it's important to see that the way we were working to the way we are working certainly has changed. And I'm just going to stop sharing that one. And let's carry on. So, often day one starts and we can be pretty enthusiastic, on the Monday morning, starting to work from home for the first time. And it's like, yes, no more commute, because a lot of us commute. I know of people that commute 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. So I'm sure they're grateful for not commuting. Some people get stuck in traffic. Some people take public transport. So it's great. You've got no more of a commute. And guess what? Casual Friday every day. You don't need to dress up in a suit and a tie. You can be more relaxed. You might not even shave every day. And guess what? You've got the ability to multitask. So you start off all excited, all enthusiastic. And then, usually it's around day 3 or 4, reality starts to hit. And whether it's the children, pets, small living space, other family members or roommates or members, all of a sudden we're all working from home, and being at home all the time can become full of distractions and is not as easy to work from home as one might think. And just a quick one, I want to go back. If everyone can just raise your hand or type in yes, have you experienced any similar experiences to what I've just mentioned, where, you a couple of days in and suddenly the reality hits, and it's either children, small living space, family members, and you get full of distractions. If you've experienced that, yep, some people have. Awesome, thank you. Excellent, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So, when we look at it, what are some of the personal challenges that we might face when working from home? And I'd encourage you, open up the chat box if you haven't already opened it up, and type in, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced when you've been working from home? Because I'd love to hear some of those. I'm just going to wait. Concentrate. Yeah, interruptions from family members who are also at home. Yeah, Lynette, I can relate to that one. Working from home, suddenly Kathy started being at home on a permanent basis. And Mama wants to feed you, the dog wants to play, staying focused with the rest of the family members around, different schedules, nice. Yeah, there's a lot of distractions that do get in the way, and suddenly it might not be as easy. So while we may not address or may not be able to address all of those challenges that we're looking at, whether they're interruptions or different schedules or everyone being confined in small spaces, we're going to get through a lot of those, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you with some ideas on how to mitigate and how to minimize these challenges that we're going to be going through. You know. So here's a list, and we've covered most of those in the chat, but this is really a consolidated list. And there are some real challenges, and it can be a little bit frustrating, a little bit overwhelming when you go from full-time working in an office to full-time remote working for the first time. So it's going to be important to manage those in a way that you can still express yourself authentically and still be able to be a productive worker. On the plus side, on the plus side, you can generally get away with a little bit less daily hygiene. I mean, I promise you that after lunch, I went and I brushed my teeth and I've had a shower this morning. But, looking at me, you can't tell if I've brushed my teeth or if I've showered. But I promise you I have. So, so sometimes you can get away with, some less hygiene. But just a quick one, I want to open up another chat and I want to ask you, what are some of the benefits that you've seen that comes with working remotely? And I encourage you, open up the chat. Would love to hear what some of your benefits are that you've received and from the experiences you've had from working at home. Aurelia, focus. That's certainly, and we have flexible working hours. Oh yeah, I like that one, flexible working hours, no travel time. Yes. Not communicating every day. That's also very true. So those are some very, very valid benefits that come out of working from home. And again, we've covered most of these in the chat. Yet at the same time, many of us would argue that these challenges are well worth it in order to get the flexibility, the autonomy from working from home. And, keep in mind that these benefits are not automatic. They don't just, you don't just start working from home and suddenly you get all the benefits of flexible working hours and all the others that we've mentioned, whether it's the increased productivity or greater autonomy. It doesn't happen automatically. And it does require us to be disciplined, we need to practice. We also need to have a structure that is really locked down. So, while productivity may be taking a hit right now around the world, given to the disruptions we are going through right now, research shows that productivity actually increases when you work remotely. And I just want to show you that. Now, so research is showing us that, working from home, even a couple of days a week, improves productivity. And I'm going to share some links in the chat box window with you that you can check out later. That's going to include some of the details to both these studies. So I just want to quickly copy those into the chat box for you. Perfect. So I've just shared a couple of links in there, some information that really, it really shows that working from home, even a couple of days, really helps and improves productivity. You may have heard about it, you may have seen some interesting articles about it, but it is true. So even though the reason why we are working from home right now might not be ideal, how can we make the most of it and even improve our productivity so that, we can have better days at home or better home office days at home. So, that's really what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the session this afternoon. So, we're going to really look at the 3 key ways to making working remotely a positive and productive experience. And without the daily face-to-face contact, the first thing that generally breaks down is trust. Trust is the most valuable, and it's easy to break down when we don't see each other on a regular basis. So in order to reap the benefits of working remotely and minimizing the challenges that we've mentioned, we must be competent in using our tools and the technology that we have. We certainly need to set and manage the expectations so that your manager knows that you can do your job with little to no supervision. And we're going to have to work extra hard to find ways to create connectivity, to connect with our managers, with our peers, with our teams, by communicating more frequently and probably in novel ways that we hadn't thought about. So, while we're still taking care of yourself, your needs, and your family. So we're going to review each one of those in more detail. So let's talk tools, mastering tools and technology. Otherwise, as my wife would say, yeah, find some tech-savvy family and friends, and you're going to be okay. But yeah, talking tools, when you look at it, there are so many tools out there. There's a variety of these tools that you may be already using in your work environment or even personally to connect and collaborate with others. Some organizations use a lot of these tools in different regions, different businesses, and even different functions. So just a quick question to everyone. I would love you to use the chat box and just mention some of the tools that you are using. When I look at it, some of the tools that I use personally, obviously we're on a Zoom call. I use Skype, Microsoft Teams, WebEx has been used in the past, Adobe Connect, and there's been several times I've gone to GoToMeeting for other people hosting it. So Skype is certainly coming through, Skype, Zoom, WhatsApp. There's a lot of different tools out there. And also what is also important is to understand, what is the impact when you or your team members aren't competent in using those tools. So again, I invite you in the chat box, what could you see as some of the impacts when you and your team and the people you're working with aren't competent in using the tools? Just take a moment and, I'd love you to type in a response into the chat window now. Wasted time, yeah, Lynette, thank you. Wasted time, very much so. Delays, lack of communication, yeah. Not feeling connected, yeah. There's a lot of them. When you look at it, not using tools at all certainly increases the feeling of isolation and being disconnected, being out of the loop, yeah, very much so. Frustration with team members who are more or less competent with you. To me, probably my pet one is being double muted, because when you go from one tool to the next, whoever set up the meeting has inevitably set it up in a way where everyone is muted like I did, and then suddenly you've got to get to speak, and either you can't unmute yourself or they can't unmute you, and it just creates a couple of problems. But yes, there's a lot of things that we see, but at the end of the day, they all really create a lot of frustration. So as we have a look, when I talk about the technology of it, when we talk about technology, don't let technical issues bother you. Just right now, I had a phone call coming in, and yeah, so it is, you just move on with it, So don't let technology bother you. It happens to everyone, even the most seasoned remote employees. The difference is not do you have problems or not, but it's really about how are you going to handle it? How do you work around the inevitable issues that surround using technology? Since I started working from home, I've probably run close on 100 different webinars, very similar to this, with a variety and a number of people. And, some of the experiences I have had has really been, servers crashing, lack of internet connection. Internet connection didn't work, landed up running one of the webinars on a mobile phone device. Another one, we had people drilling in the office next door. These things are part of life, and yeah, it is what it is, but just move on. Don't let technology stop you. And this really is one that I look at, and I've got to put my wife in this one, because as I said, she will either know someone who is tech savvy, whether it's family or friends, and probably has already set up the ideal workplace, or has at least hacked it. And potentially you will know some of these early adapters that are either in your work team or in your workforce, and understand and are using the tools. And my encouragement to you is, if you are struggling, then absolutely reach out to someone who's an early adopter, who's tech savvy, who seems to have mastered it all, and ask them to share their screen and let them show you how to use technology. Because what I've learned with my wife, Kathy, being at home, is technology is not always intuitive. And another thing, it's especially important to get agreement on what tools you're going to use during your meetings, during your one-to-one conversations. And I encourage you, just ask the question, for our regular team meetings, should we use Skype, Zoom, or Microsoft Teams? Whatever it is that you decide to use, at least it gives you the opportunity to go practice, master it a bit so that you feel more confident using it the next time. Many of us don't have the luxury of having a room or an office dedicated to working. Most of us are working in corners or in closets. And, let me let you in on a secret. That's okay, because movies are nothing more than an illusion. And your corner, your closet can also be an illusion. So is virtual working spaces. It's also an illusion. Yes, here you see that I've got an office that's set up. But if you had to have a look at, well, if I showed you on the floor, you'll find a stack of paper. So it's not exactly ideal. I've got stuff lying around that shouldn't be lying around, but you can't see that. So, virtual offices are nothing more than an illusion. So make it work for you. And just like in your normal office environment, your home office should be conducive. It should be comfortable to getting your work done. If it doesn't normally work for you, then don't do it. What I mean by that is, if you're not used to spending 6 hours on the day working off a laptop because you normally have a desktop, then don't do it. Rather, get yourself the desktop and work off that versus the laptop. And also don't be afraid. If you haven't yet been proactive, ask your manager what you need to be set up so that you're comfortable. And if you suddenly notice yourself, that your workspace is severely reducing your productivity, then, okay, maybe it might be time to make a small investment in some of the things. One of the things I've invested in, you probably can't tell, but I actually am speaking to you standing because I love to do a lot of my work standing. So I'll quickly do this. So I have gone and invested in a table that goes up and down purely because I like to work a lot standing. And then when I do get tired, yes, I can sit down, but it gives me that environment where I can make phone calls and, I feel comfortable in it. So, quickly on the chat, I'd like to give you a moment. I just want to ask, what is the best technology or tools that you've used from home that has helped you maximize your productivity? I'd love you to share that in the chat. Now, what are the best technology or tools that you've used that have helped you maximize your productivity? Cordless headset, yes, Greta, I've absolutely. A good headset is always very important. Creating your own workspaces, a closed door. Yes, Charles, I've got one of those. And I can also tell you the reason I've had to get a closed door because, here we are late in the afternoon. If we were doing this at around 7 or 8 o'clock on, or even later on a Monday morning, my youngest one, my 19-year-old Alessandro's got his bedroom next door. And if the door was open, well, it would not be uncommon for him to get out of his bedroom, go to the bathroom, and he might not be wearing too much clothes. And, we've all seen them. There's been things on LinkedIn, there's been things on Facebook where there's been some Skype sessions or virtual meetings going on, and we've had some interesting things in the background. So, it's all part of it. If you get a door, close it, it helps. So big displays, yes, I've got multiple screens. If I had to show you, I've got 3 screens on my desk at the moment. I've got 2 laptops and a big screen. So a lot of tools can help, whether it's a docking station or a separate webcam, third-party apps. There's a lot of good things that you can get. So another one of the technological discomforts is, being on video. Even, working from home as it becomes more common, being on video is always challenging, and it's something individual, and teams do tend to struggle to embrace it. So, again, in the chat box, I would like to hear, even though it can be awkward, why is the use of video so important to virtual team communication and collaboration? I'd love to, get your feedback, get your feeling, your thoughts on why is video so important to leading virtual teams and collaboration. Closest thing to being in the same room. Yeah, I like that, Karen. It's true. We are very close. Things to make people engage in discussion and not distracting. Yeah. Connection takes good preparation. True, it does take some preparation. Lots of communication through body language is vital. Absolutely. It's as human beings, that's what we are designed to do. We are designed to communicate and interact with each other. And suddenly when you're working from home, working remotely, yeah, you tend to lose a lot of that. So, I thank you. I love all the comments you're putting in there. So, my one tip that I say is, don't make people feel guilty about not going on video. While I believe that, giving feedback is the breakfast of champions, being on video is very personal. So, my example, what I say is be the example. And what I mean by that is be the example people will tend to follow. So, for example, here we are. We started the session. I had my camera on so you can see me. Quite often, if I go into a meeting that I haven't hosted, and if the person hosting it has got the camera off, you're more likely to leave your camera off, because mine is generally off every time I go into a meeting. Or alternatively, if you go in and yours is off and theirs is on, more than likely you will quite easily switch yours on and go from there. So, be the example that people will follow. And also, don't be overly worried and concerned about barking dogs or crying babies or doorbells ringing because you've got DHL or UPS downstairs trying to deliver something, or here in Switzerland, Zalando. It's all part of it. It's all okay. This is normal, and in today's environment, it should also be expected. And I believe that also when you show up in a human way, because we're not all perfect, that's fine. You reduce the stress that is going on purely with the fact of, being on video. I just wanted to share a couple of quotes. One's from Ken Blanchard, and Ken, he's one of my real life heroes. And earlier this year, I got the opportunity to actually meet Ken. And I got to spend a couple of days with him. So I flew out to the US, and absolutely, it was so fantastic to be able to speak to him and ask him questions and just engage and get to know him on a personal level. So one of his quotes, I hope, is going to inspire you, to mobilize, to be the example, take the action, to get more competent and be more committed, into mastering the tools, setting up your space with the right tools so that you can feel comfortable and be productive. So key number 2 is really, setting and managing expectations. And, let's talk about how you can do that best regarding setting boundaries. When we understand that, working from home is a challenge, and it's so easy to blur the lines between home life on the one hand and work life on the other. And I get that. And I've got, we've got our bedroom upstairs, we've got our lounge and dining room and kitchen downstairs, and my office is in the middle. And it is so easy that every time you walk up and down to, let's go and have a look at an email, let's quickly do this. And the lines become very blurred very quickly. So it's important to set that up front for yourself. Let's move on. I'm going to share a couple of scenarios with you, and I'd like you to just, in the boxes, check the box and mark off the one that you might, how you might actually respond to. So let me launch that one. Yep, it's come up, and the scenario there is earlier in the day, you send a presentation to your manager, you receive an email from your manager with some feedback and questions shortly before going to bed. What do you do? So I encourage you, select one of those and hit submit. Let's have a look at what people generally would do. I'm just very curious as they're starting to come in. Yeah, and everyone's expectations are different from, when you're working from home. So this is certainly, something that we're going to have a quick look at. And I'm just going to leave it on another few seconds. So at the moment, most people tend to be focusing on respond with a short email that says you've got the feedback and we'll address it first thing in the morning. So I'm going to quickly end that poll and quickly share the results with you. Yeah, results are in. So, basically 3 out of 4 people would short email and let's talk about it in the morning. Which is absolutely logical. Probably I would land up opening the laptop, sending that email, and then thinking about it half the night, and probably not getting a good night's sleep. So maybe it's just better to make it clear. You'll have a look at it. Let's discuss it in the morning and go from there. Oops. Let me just see, technology doesn't always work the way you want. So, as I mentioned, everyone has different expectations about working from home, and, what is acceptable to your manager might not be what your manager expects of you. So depending on your home situation, and each of us have got different working schedules, environments may vary and also change, And while the section looks at and talks about how to set and manage expectations, we also recognize that you're trying to figure it out into the new norm. And sometimes, it's really just making the best of the situation and what we have at hand. Okay, I see the internet connection is a little bit slow, but hopefully we've moved on to the next one. So, it would be easy for me to stand here and tell you, exactly what expectations you should set between your manager, your team, your organization, and your family. And, but while it's common sense to encourage you to set clear boundaries on work hours, block time for important work, and respond only during, work hours, I understand, I get it. It doesn't always reflect the reality of working from home. It doesn't. It's life takes place. And in a lot of us today, as we are at home, many of us are balancing other people's needs, whether it's our children, our spouses, our husbands. There's a lot more of us, and we're taking a lot more considerations to consideration. And as we do that, we'll end up working longer, later hours in order to give us that flexibility to do those things during the day. And, and while we are now trying to really integrate work into our home life, and I say that again, integrating work into our home life, because this is where we live, also give yourself a break, be empathetic and sympathetic with others who need to take breaks in the middle of the day of what used to be, traditional work day. It's okay. One of my favorite things working from home is in the afternoon, I try to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes and go for a quick walk, especially if the weather's beautiful outside. There's nothing nicer than being able to go out there and do those kind of things. So remember, give yourself a break as you start working from home. And, with most schools, most universities are now closed. You may be managing our work as well as the entire family's home life, which may include, university students, Leersteller students, spouses. So you've probably got multiple people in your home, all working together, all schooling from home. And this may require a schedule or some clear guidelines on, as I said, whether it's hygiene, keeping the door shut, or, you might need some guidelines, because quite often you might even be sharing the same computer, the same iPad, and sometimes, if you don't have the best internet connection at home, it might even overload the system. So, absolutely, take those into consideration and try and align both home and work duties. So, now that we know that it's not so easy to integrate work life into your home life, and it's much more important that we are structured and that we can be as disciplined as possible. As remote employees, we can't just assume that we can't just assume things or take everything for granted, whether it's the technology or the childcare or knowing you're going to get some focused quiet time to do some work or your working hours. So I'm curious, what are some of the minimum standards you could set yourself so that you could be more mindful, more intentional, and better integrate your work and life? And I'd like you to, share some information, share something that comes to mind on the chat. For those of you who have just joined, if you're familiar to Zoom, there's a chat box at the bottom. Otherwise, just go in, click on that one, because, I would love to hear a little bit about, some of the guidelines or the minimum standards that you would set yourself. Keep your normal working hours. Yeah, Gino, I like it. I like it. Personally, I struggle with it, but absolutely, I think we also mentioned it earlier where, close the door, absolutely. Or what about trying to only work on a certain number of nights of the week and, not working every night late, or, daily schedules, family members, start breaks, they're very important. Is, make your lunches in advance potentially so that you can grab a quick bite to eat and it doesn't get to, lunchtime and suddenly you go, oh, I'm so hungry, I need to grab something, and you start eating whatever you find, which is probably not the most healthiest. So, it takes a little bit of planning, to do these kind of things. Have a weekend. Yes, have a weekend, set your work hours and stick to them, or as best as you can, and also give yourself a few hours during the workday to spend with your family, because more than likely you're going to be spending more hours, later hours, starting early, so keep a schedule as best as you can. And also, let up on the dress code, because, you don't need to be in a tie. On the other hand, if I take a few steps back, you probably see that this is the new norm, wearing jeans, shirt. This is the way I've kind of worked the last couple of years. Initially, I was quite easy to start wearing, track pants or track suits around the house. And very quickly, I felt that, well, that wasn't very businesslike. And the more I did that, the less I felt like doing, and I just felt like hanging out. So kind of, make the separation between your hangout clothes and your more normal daily clothes. So, that's some of the things that, we can certainly be doing. Here's another quick quote, a bit of inspiration from Ken, which Ken really says, give your attention to work when you need to. Give your attention to your family and home life when you need to. Another way of putting that is where your focus goes, your energy is going to flow. So, when it's time to work. When it's time to have a home life, have a home life. Try and separate those two as best as possible, even though we know there's a lot of gray areas around. So key number 3, working remotely can be isolating. I know it was mentioned and came up earlier, and it's true. It's very easy to feel remote when you're working from home. And, and guess what? In fact, you're working from home. You are remote. You are pretty much isolated. So this is where, you need to be more proactive and work to maintain, improve those connections you've had with your colleagues, with your team, with your boss, before you started working from home. So you've got to work at it, be proactive in it, or as AKA, don't go dark, where suddenly, no one knows where you are, what you're doing, you feeling totally isolated, not great. No one else knows where you even are. So I encourage you, don't go dark, use the tools, communicate. Another one. I'm going to quickly share another poll with you. And I just, it's again, I'm going to share two scenarios, and I'd like you to use the check marks to honest them as honestly as you might do. Let's go to poll number 3, launch poll, and there's 2 questions to this one. So the first one is, one of your teammates knocks on your office door, so you're still working in the office, with a quick question. You're in the middle of, doing some work for a report that's due tomorrow. What do you do? And I'd love you to pick the one you do, and then the second question is, you receive, now you're working from home, so you receive a chat from one of your teammates while working from home. Again, you're in the middle of doing the same work, same report the next day. What do you do? And there's no wrong or right answer in this. Yeah, just going to give it a couple more seconds while everyone types in. Oh yeah, they're coming in thick and fast. Last ones, and one or two more just to get a nice round number in there. Excellent, perfect. I'm gonna, hopefully everyone's had a chance. I'm gonna quickly stop the poll and I'm gonna quickly share it. So, answer to the first question is, yeah, if someone walked in to your office and interrupted you, you would answer the question. Quite often, now that you're working away, you might respond to it, but you can see that the number of people that would ignore it and respond later certainly has increased. As I say, there's no right and wrong to this. It's just certainly interesting to see how our habits have changed. I'm going to stop sharing that one, move that now out the way. So here's the point, don't ignore phone calls, messages, emails. Again, it gives the impression to others that you don't care. So, my advice is, pretend that you are in the office and treat each other as if you were still in the same physical space working together. Yeah, so when it comes to being more connected really comes through more communication. And when I talk communication, it's really about having more frequent communication, but also higher quality communication. And communication is really about, how can I communicate authentically, be transparent, as well as thoughtful to the other person during these times. I mean, communication, we should always be thoughtful, but in these times, there's a lot more going on. So, I know we've probably mentioned a couple of these, but quick question, use the chat, what else might you add to this list? I mean, when you think of it, looking at the list, we've got, use texts and chats to be more social so you can increase your communication. Absolutely. What else can we do to increase communication? Show up for calls on time. Yeah, most definitely. What else, what are we missing? What would you add to this slide? What would you add? Let's have a look. Remember to, Leszek, I like that one. You're a great practicer of that one. I've seen them, and yeah, I love all of them. Another thing that, one of the things we've also done working virtually and remotely, because you don't get to have a coffee in the morning anymore. You don't get to spend some time at the water fountain. So quite often what we've done is, one of the team members or myself, anyone just starts to initiate a chat, and it can be the chat just, on one of the tools. And quite often we quickly connect and just have a 10-minute, almost if it is a coffee meeting, I would call it, where you're just having a sip of coffee, just connecting, seeing how everyone is. That's important. We need to communicate more, and we need to increase the quality and quantity of communication. So those are just some ideas of things that you can be doing, but they're not extensive. So one of the things that we mentioned earlier is really about trust, and trust is probably the most difficult thing to maintain and build when you don't see each other face to face, and you're missing out on these casual interactions at the office. Like I said, around the coffee machine, very informal, around the water fountain, having a quick snack or a lunch together. So without those, it's difficult to build trust. So, what I say is, in order to be seen as trustworthy, you need to ensure that you behave in that way so that people see that you are able, believable, connected, and dependable. For me, I go with, I need to work on the dependable one. And the reason I say that is because, I tend to do all of my calls back to back. So what that really means is I get to the calls either late in the afternoon or early the next morning, which is easy to be constantly late. And while I do try and tend to over-communicate and also show my human side, it's equally important to be reliable and show up when others are expecting me to show up. So, again, in the chat, I would just love to hear, what is something that, what is one of the elements of the trust model that you want to work on while you're working on remotely? Is it being able, believable, connected, or dependable? If you could share that in the chat with us now, I would love to see some of the responses to that. And for those of you who have forgotten where the chat is, hover down at the bottom, chat box will come up and you can type into the chat box, if there's any one of those areas that you might want to, dependable. Oh, everyone's like myself. Yeah, be dependable. I like it, but yeah, show up on time and be responsive, because it is so easy not to do that because people don't see you. It's more difficult to arrive late for a meeting face-to-face than when you're online. When you're online, I'm not saying we come up with excuses, but yeah, there's a number of logical reasons we can use to explain why we're late. Unless you're connected, yeah. So there's a lot of different ones, but thank you for sharing there. So quick last quote, from Ken. It really, it doesn't matter whether you're communicating in person or remote. The important part is keep communicating. Communication helps people feel safe, and in these times, often, I will say to the leaders in the organization, over communication is much, much better than under communication. I mean, over communication is better at most times, but specifically during these times, to maintain and build safety and trust amongst the teams, over communicate. So, that's the last quote I wanted to quickly share with everyone. And I hate leaving a workshop without taking some action. So, I hope that the session has given you some positive vibes, some positive feelings, as well as some practical ways to make working from home a positive and productive experience. And before we open up to a Q&A, I'd like you to just take some time and just start to think about what can you commit to that you've learned and heard today, and that you can apply and start putting it into practice today. And if you feel like it, you're welcome to share that. If not, that's personal. I understand. Keep it to yourself. That's fine. What I do say is I'm going to send you the Word document. So yeah, have a look and think about what is it that I can implement today that you've heard that will help you be more productive as well as enjoy the experience. Likewise, there's something you can do next week, and well, worst case, what happened if this had to become a more permanent situation? Is there something you could do? So, I will send you that out later in an email. Actually, I'm going to share it with you in just a second. In a way, I've enjoyed putting this together, and I really wanted to try and include as much information and share with you some common practices. So, I do have an ebook that I would like to share. It is not mine, but I'm actually quickly going to go in. There's a couple of things I want to share with you. So there's a couple of links in it because I'm going to send the PowerPoint presentation out to everyone. There's a couple of links, couple of articles I found that were interesting in specifically regarding to this topic. And at the same time, I also wanted to send you a couple of files. So I'm quickly going to drop in the action plan into perfect. That's gone. And I also wanted to drop in the ebook. And that's it might take a few seconds to load. And that one should be in. I will also send out some links later, just in case you don't have a chance to download it now, or for any reason the connection may not work. So I will send you an email. I'll send you all of the links. I'll send you the presentation as well, just so that you can have a look at it, and again, potentially share it. If you think some of this was interesting, by all means, gladly share it to whoever you think might get some value out of it. So I'm hoping that you had some ideas, and hopefully this has been helpful in some ways. Something I just wanted to quickly touch on. I mean, this is a start of a series I've put together specifically around the situation we're going through. So in the next couple of weeks, I've got a couple of other webinars coming up. If this has been of interest or you found some value in it, share it. If you thought this was good, by all means, I've got a couple of other webinars coming up. I can share some more information as we get closer to the dates, with the next one being next week. So, having said that, I would really like to open it up to an open discussion if there are any questions. I'm quickly going to unmute. Also, if there are any questions, please, by all means, I would love to hear them, and I'd love to hopefully be able to answer those.
Roberto, can you hear me? It's Uli.
Yes, Uli.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. There's actually one thing I would like to ask you.
Yes, sir.
I'm not really experienced in working from home because I'm just living too close to the office. But what I realize now is that I feel that working from home under these circumstances with the coronavirus may be different from our daily normal life selling automotive spare parts. So how do you feel? Because I feel that what I'm doing right now basically is, well, keeping the connection, talking to people. Actually, it is not that what I'm normally doing. So what is your view on that, if I may ask?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Uli. I'm going to quickly just mute everyone just in case there's any feedback and, some of the, but yeah, no, it's a great question. And yeah, it is different to what we normally do. But on the other hand, I think at these times, because everyone is feeling isolated, feeling overwhelmed, and there's a lot of real fears out there. So I believe even just being able to communicate and connect with your customer out there, probably most of them don't want to speak business and place orders, and that I fully get. But at the same time, you're able to maintain that connection. And if there is something you can share with them or give them, or quite often, it's just being there for them to be able to say how they feel. Because I don't know, as a man, I quite often feel that, we don't share the way we really feel or what's going on in our heads. And sometimes it's just nice to have an opportunity where you're speaking to someone and you're able to share a little bit. So is this different to what we would normally do? Yes. Can we certainly use it for the greater good? Absolutely. I believe we can use this to create more connections, to build better connections, as well as, help the others around us, because not all of us are living this the same. Some are going through it. If you think of in the US, where lots of people have lost their jobs, so everyone's going through it at different rates. Hopefully I've answered your question there, Uli. I've just unmuted everybody.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I probably have one more question, actually, if you don't mind, because I feel, and I kind of like it, that this eventually will change, rather, let's say, upgrade us in terms of a more modern type of communication. Traveling is relatively expensive. I'm not talking about the environment only, but also the time we are losing. So I feel that communicating with customers, is also easier sometimes this way, faster. On the other hand, I'm missing a little bit the personal touch in a face-to-face conversation. So I can live with that. However, do you feel that this what's happening now is really changing our communication in the future?
Oh, great question and great point. Let me quickly just mute that one, just so there's no feedback. Absolutely. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, I've spent a lot of time speaking to many, many different companies, and whether they're automotive or not, they all tend to have similar feelings that, this whole process we're going through, the whole virus has made us work from home. And certainly it's going to be fueling digitization a lot more than it was. And we probably won't be traveling as much, seeing face to face, because let's face it, as you mentioned, there's some positive cost reductions to be had. Some companies, I've heard some of them already speaking and saying, well, do we need to have all of our employees in the office? We've survived for a couple of weeks home office. Can we not do more home office or office sharing? So I think, when life does go back, it's going to be a new norm. It's not going to be, I really don't believe we're going to go back to the way it was. I think certainly, everyone feels, or most people feel that this is going to change fundamentally the way we work and the way we communicate. And yes, you do lack the personal touch, and maybe we might not get to see each other as often, but at least we can communicate in between. And then hopefully when we do get to see each other in person, face to face, then we can take some of the things we've learned, whether it's, in terms of how we engage and communicate with people, even asking questions, because quite often, you go into a conference or a forum and people ask, the very, I call them the high level questions, how are you? And no one's actually even, waiting for an answer to come out. So maybe when we do see each other face to face, we'll be more intently trying to communicate. But yeah, I think you're right. We're going to go to a new norm in the future.
Thanks, Roberto.
Any further questions? I mean, we've got a couple of minutes. We've got 2 or 3 minutes, so we still got time for 1 or 2 questions. If anyone has anything, I would love to hear them and love to reach out and hopefully answer some. Okay.
Sorry, Roberto, I still have one more.
No, absolutely, Uli. I enjoy your questions.
Yeah, the thing is actually, and don't get me wrong, I really, enjoy, talking to people in a meeting with colleagues, with customers. But what I actually experience, and we are using, of course, Skyping for a long period of time, but it actually kind of, how can I say, touched me, if that is the right way of saying it in English, that in a normal conversation in a meeting room, actually, we all maybe tend to interrupt people. In a Skype meeting, video conferences, it's much more difficult to do that. Whether it's technology or whether this is, how you say that, what was the right way of saying that? Whether this is respect, maybe, to let somebody finish, which quite honestly, it's not easy for me because I'm also somebody who probably can interrupt, but nevertheless, I learn also to stay quiet and let somebody speak and finish it before I answer, because technically it's also a challenge.
No, a very good point. I think, most of us have that same thing. I'm with you. It's easy to interrupt. And you might already have noticed, at least I certainly noticed, when we moved from, seeing people to suddenly going Skype or WhatsApp calls, initially, there was a lot more people talking over each other. And suddenly people realized that, maybe the technology, or maybe it's respect, as you say, that, maybe we need to slow down, which is a good thing because it gives us the opportunity to listen more. And I say listen intently, not just listen and at the same time think of what I should be replying, but listen intently. So I love your point because I really do see it, and I've started to experience it myself, where we don't talk over each other, we wait, listen. And I think in some ways, I feel it's almost sad that we had to get to this to get to and start seeing some of the positives, which we should be doing normally face to face. But I do appreciate that point. I love it.
I'm done. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the next session.
A great point.
Okay. Any further questions from anyone?
Robbie, I quickly want to make a point.
Yes, please.
Something I realized, it's not something, it's more to do with our own health, is just that normal movement that you normally had, say, for example, going to the train, walking to the office, coming back. Now, all of a sudden, you get up, you go sit at your desk, you come and you work again, and you go to bed. I mean, there's really some days when I don't cycle, I realize, oh my goodness, I walked like 200 steps. And I think that's the thing that people really need to plan into their day, is to just go out of the door or just do some sort of physical activity. So that's just it's just something I want to share, because that's something I realized that's happening to me. It's all of a sudden you underestimate how you're actually not moving a lot anymore because you're home officing.
Yeah, I think most people share that feeling, and you do. I believe you have to build it into your day. To me, one of the first things I do in the morning is go for a walk, because that certainly, it seems to be the only time I can get out and do some walking. Otherwise, as you say, you sit down, the day goes away, and that's why I also like to work standing, because otherwise you'd be sitting all the time. But yeah. Very good point, Franz. Any further questions? I know we just run a couple of minutes over time, but if there's one more question, I'd love to answer it. If there's no more questions, then I would really like to say thank you so much for being on the 3 keys to make working at home a positive and productive experience. Hopefully, you've gotten some good vibes, some good practical stuff that you can put into place, and I just want to say thank you. I've absolutely enjoyed it. Hopefully we'll see you on one of the next ones, but this brings our webinar to a close, and thank you so much. And I say stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected.